Hello, Mary Kate, Dr. Mary Kate Morse in the
Hello,
house.
Echo. Hello, Pastor Brian.
Hi. Um,
Hi.
Mary Kate, I'm so glad you're here. First of all, how are you?
I'm doing well. Everyone's healthy in my household and
Mm,
catching up on life. As many of you might know, my father passed away in January.
mm,
I had hand surgery, and so
yeah.
I'm finding the downtime helpful for my soul. So thank you
Yes.
for asking.
Yeah, we were talking earlier about how there's the Enneagram, people saying that uh, Enneagram number two and number seven will have the hardest time in this season.
Mhm.
And I was telling you how my wife is a seven and I'm a two. And so actually she's doing really well though.
Yeah.
She's not, because she's an extrovert and a seven, but she's surviving. It's
Yeah. Well,
me. I'm really the mess.
yeah. Well, you have to start helping people.
Yeah, I know. Who do I help other than
You're,
her and these
you're,
10,000 kids in our house? My goodness.
well, you're
Oh,
helping me by talking to me today. That's
yeah,
helping
maybe
me.
that's why I'm doing these interviews because I want to help people uh,
Uh,
get connected to God and themselves and
right.
community. And I thought of you because I'm like, my goodness, I mean, everyone in Echo knows you, but maybe there's a few that might be watching that may not know you. But you're my professor. You were my seminary professor, and now you're my doctor professor. As long as you don't kick me out of the program, and you've been my mentor, my spiritual director, and you're my pastor. And
Yeah.
so, my goodness, you've been so many things. Are you sure you're not my mom?
I'm not your mom. Not your mom.
Okay, okay, you're not my mom. You're not my mom. But goodness, you've been so many things, and I thought, there's leaders out there, there's congregations out there that may need wisdom and some sense of direction as we're all trying to navigate these uncharted waters
Mm-hmm.
together. And so I thought I have a chat with you.
It's nice to chat with you and
Yeah.
be
And it's
part of
also
the
my way of
conversation.
bragging. It's also my way of saying, I know Dr. Mary Kate and you don't. uh,
You're so funny.
so can I start with a question?
Sure.
Okay. I before we get to like some of the more serious stuff,
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you some questions that I love from
Oh,
this author
oh
from
my goodness.
this
I
author
can
named
pick which
Tim
one.
Ferriss.
Yeah.
Tim Ferriss, and he wrote a book called, I think it's called Tribe of Mentors, where he had these set of questions that he asked all these industry leaders. Just amazing questions. And so I picked out a few that I
Mm-hmm.
thought I would like to ask you. And so,
I hope I can answer them.
yeah, no, you will, you will. So the first question I have for you is, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say? If you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it, what would it say?
Well, my impulse, the first thing that came to mind
Yeah.
is some kind of beautiful scene, and it
Mm,
would say, be kind.
mm, Now, is it because of the season, or you mean like just in general? That's what you would say.
Well, I think the season heightens it, but we've
Yeah.
been in a very contentious, ugly time where
Mm,
we believe the worst of people and have the
mm,
impulse to kindness is pretty on a pretty low level.
yeah.
And yet, kindness is such a simple, ordinary, everyday extension of goodness and character. And
Mm,
it's a way of saying, I see you. I
mm,
see your humanity. I care about you.
mm,
So I can be courteous. I can say hi. I can withhold my tendency to be reactive and just, you know,
mm-hmm,
be angry or frustrated. And I feel that's the kind of space I'm trying to hold in myself. When you have to stay in a house with everybody all the time, and
I know, yeah.
having that kind of settledness of, and I don't think it's natural. I think our natural impulse is to protect and defend ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so it requires I think, a spiritual attentiveness, a prayerfulness about wanting to hold that space of kindness.
Are you saying we need to be like attentive to that, meaning aware all day and hold it? Like I'm gonna be kind. I'm going to react differently.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to just tell yourself to be kind,
Yeah.
because it's an impulse that comes out of, I mean, it's an aspiration I have for sure. But because I think it's very powerful. But I think it's very hard to sort of tell yourself to be that. And so you have to cultivate it in your inner being. You have to cultivate that. And so you can cultivate that with a little prayer, saying a little prayer, the goodness, for instance, the goodness of God as a prayer, the goodness of God, God's goodness, peace of Christ, and carry a little way of managing your emotions, so that when you feel that kind of impulse to be quick-tempered or frustrated or anxious, that the prayer lifts up at the same time, and you can go back to that space of the peace of Christ, goodness of God. And so I think you have to learn how to manage that wildness in you that we all have.
Wow. It's interesting you said the word manage, because I think step 1 or step 2 of this 12-step program, I think you have to confess that your life has become unmanageable.
That's true.
And I wonder if being kind is a way of being sober.
Wow.
Sober from being ruled in an unruly way by your emotions. And I think our culture that is so big on being authentic and true to our feelings, in many ways, it's hedonistic. We're so run by our emotions. I know for myself, it feels good to be like, to let things out. Like when I'm yelling at my kids, I'm like, yeah, I let it out. But it's almost like being drunk in negative emotions. I said, wow, that's powerful, managing. I will now bring that to the Lord.
Well, and I think the managing is a good word, because it is a natural impulse to protect oneself and assert oneself. I think there's a good side to that. But when it comes at the expense of others, it's not from God.
Yes.
So we have to know how to allow that, not to shame the feeling, but to put the feeling in its place. So not let it rule us or environment. Say, okay, I'm frustrated because I'm stuck here and I can't do what I want to do, and I'm upset. So we confess like that we're not in control, but then the prayer comes, kindness of Christ, the goodness of God, the peace of Christ, that sort of thing. And we teach ourselves how to be in a more generous space with Christ, which is where Christ is. Grace is so generous. His love is so generous. How do we help ourselves? So I like the management word for that.
Yeah, that's so good. Okay, I have another one. I have another one before we get to the obvious questions about the situation that we're in as a nation and as a church. But I'm excited about these. So what purchase of $100 or less has most positively impacted your life in the last 6 months or recent memory? What is something that you've bought that's $100 or less that you're like, man, this really impacted my life or improved your life? Aren't these great?
These are great questions. Okay. I just thought of something.
Mm-hmm.
You gave me this book.
Oh, yeah.
You gave me this book, and it
Yes.
moved me so much.
Yes.
In fact, this book is a book all about kindness.
That's right.
It's all about putting ourselves in a more spacious, open, receptive place. And I love this book so much that I bought 10 of them. And I have been sending them out to people that I know who have lost a parent.
Oh, wow. Yes.
And so I'm mailing one today to my good friend Debbie White, who lives in Georgia, and her mom just passed away. And
Yes.
And to Len Sweet, whose wife passed away.
That's right. Wow.
And so I'm that's what I did with the 100.
Yes, that's Charlie Mackey's book.
$100. It's a change.
I'll have to post that up on this video. That it's Charlie Mackey's book that he recently put out. He's been doing a series of these little drawings of this little boy and a horse and a mole, right?
Right.
Yeah. Well, that that book spoke to me. I mean, it was first through his Instagram that I started following his drawings, and for me, how do I say this? Even though I didn't lose anyone, I was grieving. I was grieving the loss of, I guess, the previous 10 years. As in, like, it was maybe my midlife, but I was letting go of things, as you know, and there was an emotional. I need an emotional anchor during that time. And Charlie Mackey's book really helped me to be kind to myself, you know. So it helped me grieve in a kind way and assess myself in a kind way and tend to ourselves, you know. And so I think when you were grieving your father, I thought, oh man, I need to send this book.
Oops, I'm touching my face. Sorry.
Oh, it's okay. Oh yeah, I know. One thing I realized is I touch my face so often. My goodness.
I know, but thank you, Brian, for that book. And I've been so happy to pass it on because it's in a way, the simple drawings and the heartfelt truths.
Yeah, it's so good.
Are very healing. And it's a kind of a scripture. It's a kind of a sacred text.
So he's an English artist, and I heard that the hospitals in England now have his drawings printed out in those on those beds, ICU beds or whatever, and they show it to their coronavirus patients and to each other to encourage each other.
Yeah.
And I think he's a Christian. I think I found him through one of the British writers or Christian. I don't know, but you know,
he's obviously a profoundly good soul.
Yes.
And so it's wonderful to have someone who's so creative, able to use his talents like that to speak to a really broad community of people and comfort them. I think that's a very Jesus thing to do.
Yes. On that note about books being given, what is one book that you find yourself giving or recommending the most often to people? I know it's different for each situation, but do you ever find yourself going like, wow, I recommend that book a lot?
Well, all the books that I found profoundly helpful in shaping my thinking and my faith, that sort of thing, I used in my doctoral program. But I think the more recent one is Jamar Tisby's The Color of Compromise.
Yes.
And I've been trying to read more and more about the hidden realities of what it's like for people of color in our culture. And so I heard Jamar speak at an event where I was speaking and he was speaking, and he had just finished the book. It had just gone to press, and it was his doctoral dissertation. And
I see.
I mean, it was profound in
Yeah.
helping me confess my own complicity and to understand the systemic complexity of it in the church and how blind we are to what we do to one another. And I found myself thinking how important is cultivating a spirit of humility about what we know.
Yeah.
That we always need the Holy Spirit. We do not know, but except a very few things.
That's a good book. It really influenced my last sermon that we just posted yesterday. I was talking about how what would it look like if we had God as king. You know, we're going through the book of Samuel, and the elders in Israel asked Samuel for a king instead of God, and so my message was basically about that. Like, what if we didn't ask for a human king? What if we wanted God to be our king? What would it look like? And I used Tigsby's influence to talk about, well, I think it was with you, we talked about how this nation has yet to officially apologize for the atrocities, the organized crime is, I think, what one of the authors said, right? And so I talked about how if this nation was truly Christian and not just politically, we would actually take ownership and responsibility over our sins and at least apologize, you know. So yeah, yes, that book is really influential, and it's really helped me at least navigate this time for our church, because our church is a church of color, and so we're trying to see, how do we stand and minister in this nation, and how do we stand in solidarity with those that have been oppressed.
Well, that reminds me, then I have a question for you. I have a
Okay.
friend with whom I've been texting, and he's from China, but he's American. And he has said that there have been a huge spike in harassment, racial harassment against Asians. And I wondered if ECHO has been struggling with that and how you are helping them navigate that.
Yeah, I mean, luckily I haven't heard of anyone in our church being harassed or victim of violence, but we are all affected in the sense that we are angered by it, we are hurt by it. It's interesting though, MaryKate, because I think I've said this to you in class, but the Asian American community, even though we are kind of pushed outside of the political conversation, we have benefited greatly from the white privilege. And I would say, and I'm no expert in sociology and all this in America, but my guess is that we are trailing right behind the white Americans in the sense of privilege. We have benefited greatly economically. Of course, our parents' generation and before worked hard for it. And of course, in history, the Chinese and the Japanese Americans, they've all gone through their pain here. But I think this issue right now with the virus and the racism that we're experiencing, it's reminding us that we are not white. It's reminding us that as much as we like to be, we are still in that category. And it's forcing us to, I think, face that reality and helping us to come out of our silence. So yeah, as pastors, yesterday I met with our pastors, and we're now prayerfully engaging in that conversation. What does it mean for us to be Asian American, who are both privileged in many ways, but also an outcast in many ways? So yeah, we don't have clear answers yet on all this, but we are learning to navigate together. Yeah, but it's painful. Yeah, but in the light of what we were studying, it immediately helps us identify with all those that are being discriminated and harassed. And
yeah. Well, I hope that as part of the process, being, I don't think being white or being thought of as white is the goal.
Mm-hmm.
The goal is being respected as a human person,
Mm-hmm.
and having, which means your voice, your contribution is valued no matter what color you are.
Yeah.
And that's our great aspiration. And well, I think that was Christ's aspiration.
Mm.
And I think sometimes it makes it more difficult then to discover, if we want to be I'm a 9, so I will say we with whomever I'm with.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm saying, but I wonder if part of that is discovering what it is that the Asian community brings to the conversation that is so important, and how do you cultivate it? How do you pull it out of the distortion it's had by trying to find a way through a white culture?
Yes. Yeah.
That makes sense? How do you get back to it? Because there's something, there's so much about, I believe, every culture brings something that helps us to be more human together.
Mm.
And knowing what that is, discovering that, and cultivating that voice is important. So not becoming more white, but becoming more Asian.
Yeah, that's interesting, because that's the question we're asking. What does it mean for us? Because we're not quite Korean. We're not quite Chinese or Japanese. When we go there, we don't belong there.
Right.
We are seen as foreigners, and of course here we're now often seen as foreigners. And so we're in this weird space. And
but
it's there
what is in this space? And because you are you're not like you have to go here or go there. What is this space? So there's something about the cultivating of your experience and wisdom and agency that you found in this space that makes the contribution in the conversation.
Yes. So I identify a lot with the exilic community, the diaspora. Who are we? What were we? Who are we now? And what are we now rebuilding? If we are given a chance to rebuild, and what's our conversation and contribution now to our society? So there's a lot of work to be done. There's a lot of history, I believe, as you have had us study not only the Christian history, but the American history with its race issues. I feel like that's important for communities like us to also study our migration history. Where did we come from? Why? What were the wars and political issues that our parents had to deal with that made them come here?
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah, because it shapes the psyche. It shapes our parents' worldview.
Yes,
that has been passed on to us, and it's been mixed with the American journey in history. And now we are the new America. We are the mixture. It's like back in the old days with Irish, how the Irish became Irish Americans and all that. So there's this formation of a new identity that I think we haven't had time to process, at least as a church for ourselves. We've been in Let's Survive as a church for the last 10 years. And now we're at this place where we're like, now what does it mean to examine ourselves?
Exactly.
Before we offer ourselves.
Yeah,
to
what
our,
is your identity?
yeah, yeah,
Special community, this echo place, and
yeah.
what is this identity? Yeah, I think it would be a great gift to be able to name
Hmm.
a few of the main things.
Yeah. But
And
we
I
went through our,
going about it by studying, go back and study your history.
hmm, yes.
And
There's a lot of work done already there, and we just got to study it. But our church is full of, like other, like there's Japanese Americans, Chinese, and Filipino Americans. So our church is not solely Korean American, and so there's that complexity there, where some of the other Asian Americans are now the minorities within our predominantly Korean American church. It's very interesting, but there's so much opportunity for listening and studying and discovering together. Yeah, there's a lot of work to be done. So we're really excited for the next, I don't know, next 10 years or whatnot, of how do we reconstruct and then allow the Holy Spirit to deconstruct, and so that we can offer a voice or something into our society. Yeah, but in the early days, as you know, we went through our share of I don't know if it's harassment, but there's so many usually white men that kind of they didn't validate us. It was interesting. They would always say, Brian, how come your church is not quite American? And I would say, I don't understand the question, because most, if not, I would say 90% or more are Americans. They're born here, and some of their parents were born here. I don't know how much more American can you get? And basically, they were saying, why is it not more white or more diverse? And there was always a sense of like we're not quite legitimate
right.
until other races legitimize us.
I'm really sorry
Um,
about that, Brian.
yeah, no, it's okay. I mean, we got over it, or I got over it.
No, it's not okay.
Yeah,
Sorry. I'm sorry.
yes. So
But I know that you'll rise above it and move on, of course. But
yeah, and so we learned to embrace our own identity after a while. We're like, yeah. At first, it was, I had to ask myself, like, God, why? What's going on here? Why are we not attracting, I guess, all the races? Why are we not such a colorful church? But I found that I think there needed to be a safe haven for this group of people. And many of our people were de-churched. They grew up in a immigrant church, and then left it because they could not find their I would say their adult faith home. So they were leaving, but they needed somewhere to cleave. And there were not many churches, I think, that was like ours, in the sense of like, you know, um, we're kind of a second, third generation church, I would say American Asian, not Asian American. You know what I mean? And so they were finding a place where they can find themselves and God again, on their own terms now, as adults. So yeah, so we embraced it. We're okay. Um, but now we're like, okay, what do we do now? Now that we're comfortable with ourselves, now that we are confident in who we are, what does it mean to discover our past and offer, a better future for others and ourselves? Yeah. Well, let me move on here real quick and ask you
so,
some.
Brian, is Randy talking? You hear Randy talking in the background?
No, do you hear my kids?
No.
Oh, okay, good.
Okay, I just
No,
want to make sure it
I don't
wasn't.
hear Randy, but I do get links from Randy every day. He sends me cartoon strips and the funniest links literally every day. And I'm like, Randy, where are you getting all this? Are you doing research, or how do you?
No. Randy does not do research. He just, I don't know, has a group of friends who post a lot of stuff like that, and then he just shares it.
It's so funny. It's so funny. And then when I last saw him, I was like, Randy, is this like a mass email or something? Like, how are you doing it? He said, no, I am sending one by one to you. So I'm like, wow, these are tailored for me. Wow.
I know, and Randy doesn't have that. He doesn't have a big friend thing because he doesn't want all that. It's just people he really cares about. So
Oh,
a small group of friends, and
oh
so
my gosh.
he might send it to you, but then he wouldn't send it to anybody else. So
Oh my goodness, that's so funny.
it
I
is.
love it. It's like in the morning, it's like I get the news and then I get Randy's and then I get Randy's joke of the day. Oh man, it's too funny. Okay, okay. Well, let's at least end with something about this season. How's that? Um, so let's see. So we're trying to navigate through this season, right? Through this virus national crisis. Let me ask, what can congregations do, and or do you have any advice for leaders as they try to lead? Like, let me say this: what is something that you really advise leaders to do and not to do during this time? Leaders of congregations, of ministries, of small groups, everything, leaders of all kind. Um, what is something we must do or we should offer, and what is something we should not do whatsoever?
Well, these are recommendations rather than ultimatums.
Okay.
But I feel like the great gift of this time is that it has stopped our compulsion to strive.
Mm.
We have been physically forced to stay in place. And we have been physically forced, in a sense, to not be running around just filling our needs with running here, running there. And even though there's a horrible thing going on in the background, which I believe will have much long-term suffering because of the economic impact, it's still an amazing time to listen to God, listen to each other, and it. So what I would recommend that leaders don't do is try to fill it up with too much spiritual entertainment.
What do you mean by that?
Well, guiding people more in how to use the time rather than pushing things in their direction. Like, here's a Bible study, here's a prayer, here's a this, here's a worship, here's a this, just pushing things at people. So sort of creating another river of stuff.
Yeah, another thing to binge on. Yeah.
Exactly. Rather than helping yourself as a leader and helping your congregation to lead into this time as a possible way to hear God with less noise. So there's less noise. And so how do we create space to listen to what's deeply going on within myself as a leader, within my own life? What am I really, where am I, where do I feel stuck? Where do I feel hopeful? What calling have I not leaned into? These are the kind of questions I'm asking myself now that I have a little more space. And rather than see it as an opportunity to get my voice out there, or help people not be anxious by giving them lots of stuff.
Yeah.
Instead, how can I help people to accept that we are in an anxious time, and so of course you're going to feel anxious. But then how do you in a place of prayer and with family and with yourself, how do you go into creating space to listen to each other and to listen to God. So, for instance, Brian, I love the question that you've been asking, because even just asking questions like that of each other in the home, just getting to know each other.
Yes.
That we don't ever have much time for.
Yes.
Dinner conversations, lunch conversations.
Yeah. Wow, interesting.
Instead of binging on Netflix or Amazon Prime or Disney Plus.
Yeah, you know, my daughter last night, my oldest, I was she asked, "Hey, can you come in before, I go to bed?" And I went in there, and she's like, "Sit down, Daddy, I'm okay." And she had little Post-its, and she created 8 questions that she wanted to ask me. And these were all questions that were personal, like getting to know me. And I was like, "Whoa, where did this come from?" And she was like, I'm interpreting, but she was basically saying, I want to use this time well. And so she thought, we're crazy all day. It's crazy, all these kids, and she's the oldest, so she's always helping us out, and it was her way, I think, of wanting to connect and find out stuff that she couldn't. And before, because of time, school, studies, homework. But that really moved me, because I'm thinking, wow, it's basically examinations.
Yeah.
But I really like what you said, because I have been tempted too. Like, it's weird. The minute this all happened, Mary-Kate, I don't know if it's because my email address is part of all these like Christian ministry networks or publishing companies, but I started getting all these ads and emails about like time to start your podcast, and it's time to offer your new book, and time to write that thing you've always wanted to write, and I'm thinking, oh my gosh, I felt this pressure, like, is it? And then you go online, and everybody is now producing all sorts of stuff. And I love what my staff was saying to me, that in this time, I think it's more about being focused and offering the gift of yourself, rather than just, because honestly, now we're all competing against entertainment.
Kind of competition. Yeah. I love what your daughter did. And so there is that natural impulse in us to connect and get to know each other better that gets overwhelmed by our striving, our need to promote, and the anxiousness that we feel if our voice isn't out there.
Yes.
So I love that, what your daughter has done. And I agree. I think that this can be for the church an invitation into the desert, in a sense. And I know some households are busier than others, but it seems to me that if there was a time set aside every day, like a meal time, where we were going to each person bring a question to ask, and we would take turns just answering a question, learning how to listen fully to each other. And even if we don't have anyone in our house, I know some people are living without other people in their house. They can reach out and talk, on the phone or something, connect.
Yeah.
And the other thing, I wonder if there's a way to create in the home an agreed upon time where we are worshiping together, just being quiet, go to our rooms, be still, help little kids find some way to color, or something that helps them get in touch with the sacred. And since there's nothing else that's we don't need to take them to, soccer practice,
nothing,
piano practice, or whatever, or this event or that, to help them cultivate what it means in their home to have some uninterrupted listening time with God. What does that look like? Sit and listen to music and color, and with the intent of hearing God. And then what conversations might we have together after that? And so
Wow.
that's what I think the invitation really is about. Well, it's how I think this time, this can be used to build a deeper well
Mm.
rather than pouring out bucket after bucket after bucket.
Wow.
Build a deeper well.
Yes. Well, that speaks to me. Yeah. Hmm. I think we're really scared to be still.
Yeah.
I think more than the virus, we're really scared to be silent and still, you know.
Well,
I know for me, yeah, go ahead.
we're afraid we'll disappear. We think we'll not,
Mm,
won't be anything left if it's just quiet.
mm,
How we've bought the dark lie
mm-hmm.
that taking up space with our words and our thoughts and our energy and our emotions is what makes us real, rather than only Christ can do that.
Wow.
And the most real you will ever feel will
Hmm.
come out of a deep silence and not out of noise.
Well, I think that's a great way to end it. That is a powerful statement, Mary Kate. Oh my goodness. Oh man. Well, thank you for your time.
You're welcome, Brian.
Gosh.
I love talking with you. I love I love the creativity of the conversation that we can have together, and
Mm.
you've really brought me a lot of goodness today, and I'm always pleased to be a part of what's going on at Echo. So hello everyone. Hi from me,
Yes.
from my
Everyone misses
family.
you.
My love to all of you, and my prayers are with you always. I think and pray for this church. Love this church.
Do you mind closing us in prayer?
I would be
Yeah.
happy to.
Mm.
Lord Jesus, we are mindful of your loving presence that is all around us, that we can never escape it. But sometimes it seems so distant and hidden. Lord, I pray for a blessing of your love on each and every heart at Echo, each and every child, adult, young person, leader, each and every server. I pray, Lord, a deep measure of your love upon them. Thank you for this church. Thank you for their faithfulness. Help them find their unique identity in you. And I pray in your holy name, Lord. Amen.